Hey guys, Tyler 2K here. Today we're going to take a second look at the Reina trailer in this long form breakdown. Simply because of how long these take to edit, I already have the uncut versions of both the Steve and Leo trailer already available for members. So if you like my content, consider joining to check those out. Yeah, so the first thing we see is the stage for Reina. We have all these demons and spirits all over the temple. You know, not too surprising, we've seen this artwork before. Or similar artwork, but then we get this really big reveal of what appears to be Akuma, and presumably it is Akuma. Maybe in her storyline we're going to find out some information. Maybe Kazumi made a deal with Akuma's tribe to keep Reina a secret, and Reina is like the second chance destructor of the Mishima bloodline or something like that. Pure speculation, of course. And actually, you know what, let me go ahead and throw that in here. Everything here is pure speculation. Even if I'm correct, it might change by final release date, which will luckily only be in a few months from now. But keep that in mind. I'm going to do educated speculation because we know overall Reina does appear to be not quite a true carbon copy of a character like Heihachi, but very similar. In the storyline, or rather the official documentation, there is no official, oh, she is Heihachi's kid. But it's like obviously the worst kept secret, especially because, you know, when the leaks came out some months ago, you know, pre-Evo, it was known back then. During my trailer, and again, if you want to watch the quick trailer, less than 5 minutes, top right corner for that. But during the trailer, I never specifically said she was, you know, Heihachi's progeny or whatever. Very clearly, she's influenced, and it almost certainly is the case. But it's still not official, but it's like a 99%er, so it's like, oh yeah. But whatever, I'll play coy just to not ruin anything, sort of thing. But yeah, maybe we'll see some information regarding Akuma in her storyline. It's very, very likely. So hence they showed it as the very last spirit shown in her stage. Her stage itself obviously looks very similar to the T3 Jin stage. No surprise, like all the stages, especially the Amaru and all the whatnots, look very, very similar. So obviously we have the world is mine kind of pose on the throne here. People made a direct correlation to Jin, of course, but it's just a very common pose. Reina in Spanish literally means queen. She is likely Heihachi's kid, and she is the rightful heir to the throne, at least in her mind. Now, granted, like during the video, like very often, we do see her make reference to like calling like Jin like senpai or something like that. I don't know if I remember correctly. So there, maybe she doesn't truly think of herself as a queen. Although from what Harada has said, I guess Heihachi has like 19 kids at least all over the planet. So statistically, quite a few of them are going to be female characters. So I don't know. My guess is for now, this Reina will be it. Maybe sometime in the future we might see another one. But I at this point, I highly, highly doubt it. She clearly was trained in like Heihachi's specific Mishima style karate and whatnot, although she is a Taido character. But yeah, we see the Unsoku stance, which in Japanese literally means footwork. It's important to note, in case you don't know, because most players here probably aren't Soul Calibur players or have played a proper 3D game before. But here we see evidence of essentially what appears to be an 8-way run. And an 8-way run is pretty straightforward. If you look at the D-pad or a stick or a numpad, and actually you can look in the numpad on your computer, 7, 8, 9, or the top of the stick or top of the numpad are typically reserved for jump back, jump up, and jump forward. So if you tap 8 or up and then let go of the neutral, you will sidestep instead. And then furthermore, same thing. If you tap 7, you'll just kind of flinch and not do anything. But if you hold 7, you'll jump backwards, 9, hold forward. But in a proper 3D game like Soul Calibur, you can think of the numpad or the controls as your actual feet. So backwards would be 4, 6, 8, 2. And furthermore, in Soul Calibur, if you were to hold up back or tap 7, you'll actually move in the 7 direction. So you have 2 axes moving simultaneously. So here, this allows for not just natural movement away from Fang, but in a direction where he might not be able to track you down. So the way Tekken overall is designed is to avoid movement upon multiple axes simultaneously because you get into really, really funky situations. It's one of the reasons why Armor King's back sway, or side sway rather, is so strong. Is not only does he properly side sway to evade incoming, but because he takes a step backwards, he's able to evade quite a few options that you have to beat him. So unless you have an option that consistently hits to your left, he can evade it. And even sometimes moves that hit to the left will get beat simply because he takes a big step backwards. So characters like that, like Armor King, are moving on two axes simultaneously, so they're able to evade basically everything you can do. Furthermore, as we see later on with Unsoku stance, it's very possible that she can just guard in the stance. So let's say for some reason Fang is able to do something that can hit her. Because she is retreating, she can still block the incoming attack, presumably. So it's something of note why the dynamics of like 8-way run and how things can change. With that being said, in the short form video, I did talk about how one of the movements of Unsoku is, I believe, Gensoku. And Gensoku is signified by moving on a triangle and then moving back to a position and then moving forward. So it's very possible that the Reina player isn't 8-way running and instead might be just holding back. And naturally, by holding back, she is performing Gensoku. And then as she crosses over to leg positioning, notice how her left hand is starting to elevate. So signifying she's switching stances by just naturally moving. So with that being said, this wouldn't be the first time that 8-way run is added to a character in Tekken. So the character Yoshimitsu, if he's able to enter into sit or Indian stance, which is down 3+4, if you hold the 3+4, you can actually move in 8-way run directional. So you can move up, you can move down back, down forward, up forward, right? You know, so on and so forth. You can move along every axis. Oftentimes you can taunt your opponent with an 8-way run, and it's, unless they know what to do, they're going to either whiff on you, period, or you're going to evade during the 8-way run while on the ground. So it's a double benefit. So this, like I said, wouldn't be the first time, but it's very atypical for Tekken, because even though Tekken is a 3D game, you're really only limited to certain things you can do, like back dash, dash forward, sidestep left, sidestep right. But these little zones in between are all dead zones that you really can't get to without a proper 8-way run. It gets a lot of influence and its direction from just general 2D, which might be one of the reasons why Tekken overall can be approachable, although I would imagine most people would prefer an 8-way run system over timed sidestep and sidewalk and so on and so forth. Okay, so from Unsoku stance, we see that Reina goes for a handstand. This handstand crushes the Kenpo 4. Handstands typically evade lows, but yeah, we see the low crush, although the weird part, which definitely threw everyone, including myself, is why Reina's cartwheel doesn't seem to be an attack. Maybe it is special mobility, but this looks very much like a cartwheel attack, and Fang should be getting hit, but whatever. I guess not here nor there, but I know it threw a lot of people, myself included, once again. Okay, so we see Fang try to go for a back one. Reina does either some sort of down back 4 series, or as I mentioned in the short form video, does a down back 3+4, which is more likely in this case, looking very similar to Eddy. Reina does have quite a few Eddy style looking attacks, this being one of them. We see up 3 later, and I think maybe one other thing. So it's possible that Eddy bled into Reina, and this is just signifying that. So even though Reina's art form is Taido, and you know, we talk about how she has essentially 4 stances, we definitely still see some like Capoeira influence here, which is probably the case. And this likely will be down back 3+4, because like the very next clip we're going to see is what appears to be like a Shaheen down back 4. So this probably is a down back 3+4, although there is a chance it will be modified by heat, and we'll get to that later. Okay, so actually no, it's not the next clip, my bad. Okay, we see probably up forward 3-1. Of course, this is a safe mid. Harong tries to go in with like a 4 style attack, and then Reina evades with what appears to be similar to an AOP, although in my short video, I didn't call it an AOP. I think this is more likely to be very similar to Heihachi down back 1+2. Furthermore, 1+2, because we see the slash attack on it looking very similar to like a lay slash. So the 1+2, even though this might be like a back 1-1, kind of similar to an Ogre or True Ogre back 2 series, I'm inclined to believe it's like down back 1+2, and she just does the double swipe with the solo input. Again, very similar to Heihachi. Now, the spicy part about this is she does perform a follow-up attack. And of course, this follow-up attack here is an overhead high. As mentioned, kind of similar to Eddy in the sense where, he performs the stop, initially stops the attack there, or continues a string with like a back 2 series or back 1 series, whatever it may be. Put video here regarding that. So it's very possible that there is a possible 50-50 here. The fact that Harong has fully recovered lends me to believe that there is possibly a high follow-up. Of course, here Harong ducks and guesses wrong, gets clipped, and then seeing as how he gets knocked down, maybe some sort of wake up poke would also win here. Although if you look at the head recovery on them, so Reina has recovered, but Harong has also recovered. So this likely is probably like a +0 or maybe +1 situation. So likely there's no steel pedal guaranteed, but maybe Reina can go for some sort of flinch attack instead. Oh yeah, so here I talk about how, when we have Reina normally, and although we have seen her normally perform just Unsoku stance specifically, here she transitions back to her default stance. So very similar to Harong with an LFF, which is his normal standing stance, and then he has RFF, which would be an analog here to what likely is Unsoku on her standing option. So here June performs a forward 1 and Reina blocks it. Notice how Reina loses her special kind of proper standing stance, if you want to call it that, which is likely again Unsoku. So RFF, she blocks and then transitions back to default stance, which would therefore be essentially an LFF. So while we don't see like any real bleed over in attacks when it comes to Reina versus Harong, just this idea that maybe blocking in stance transitions you back into a normal stance would be Harong-esque. So going from RFF on natural standing to LFF on block, she then performs a non-stance down back forward, looking very similar to Shaheen. Notice how it does perform a tornado spin here, which I didn't mention during the video, lends to the possibility that Shaheen down back 4 is also a tornado spin in Tekken 8. Of course, we haven't seen the trailer for Shaheen yet, but it very likely is the case that if Reina's down back 4 is that, so will be Shaheen's. It's also important to note that if you look at like modern day Shaheen, like post season 4, 5.0 Shaheen, down back 4 is actually a move that's very commonly spammed because it effectively is essentially a high crushing electric. It is so instant, there really is no way to beat it apart from reading it. It has a lot of range, and then it also has a little bit of tracking to it. So while it doesn't full track, it does clip you when you might not be expecting it. So maybe by making a tornado spin for both Reina and Shaheen, presumably, it gets rid of a little bit of the versatility when it comes to using it as a spam attack. Although notice there is significant pushback on this down back 4. So unlike tornado spins, which scale with amount of hits, in this case there is some good pushback to it, which again leads me to believe probably Shaheen will have the same thing. Maybe Shaheen dash up down 2, down back 2, sneak cancel line, so on and so forth. Bob's your uncle. But yeah, almost certainly a down back 4 in this case. Hence, that means the early attack we saw is probably like Eddy down back 3+4 as well. So here, Reina performs a roll. This appears to be the Sentai stance because in the documentation, or the interview rather, they specifically mention that Sentai is used to close distance quickly and launch rushes. So this would be a very similar analog to Kunimitsu's set stance. And here we see Sentai 2, which probably isn't a counter launcher, but who knows. I talked about it in the short form video, how it looks very similar to JC, Julia Chang. But at the same time, it's her professional wrestler, almost like lucha style to her. So she doesn't have that stance as a modification of the stance, but it does look very similar to her role too in Tekken Tag 2. Okay, we see, again, this massive churning back kick. Not really much to talk about. It low crushes Xiao Yu's down back 4. And we have the sparks, and from the big animation, it probably does a billion fucking damage. but that's about it. Not much else to talk about. Although it being a really big spinning kick, it's very possible maybe this is an analog to a Devil Jin 444. It probably is plus frames on block. I think Devil Jins might be like plus 4, maybe plus 5. Although in this case, it being a low crush might modify the frames. Maybe it's only plus 1, plus 2, you know, so on and so forth. We see another low crushing option here. In this case, we see Leroy go for down back 4, which, to be honest, is a little bit bad in Tekken 8 because it's launch punishable now. And then Reina goes right over it with presumably what's an up 3, because we have seen up 4-3 already. And as talked about, with a lot of bleed over to Eddy, this very likely looks very similar to like Eddy up 3. Although in the case of Eddy up 3 does hit grounded. And from here, when she performs the kick, she then falls, you know, to the ground safely. So it likely isn't a ground hitting hit, but something similar, instant crush, you know, so on and so forth. Lars performs SC 3+4, which I believe is plus 0S. So technically, Lars is recovering essentially quicker here. It doesn't matter because Reina performs a crouch cancel off of it. Someone had mentioned this looks very similar to FC down forward options, which were from Tekken 3. To be honest, that's fully out of my wheelhouse. I played those a little bit, but I was a noob, young noob back then, so I can't really say. Although from the fact that she is in full crouch, there clearly is some sort of full crouch cancel going on here. As I talked about, she stands up and then performs it, so maybe it's a 4-4-2, you know, crouch cancel option into stance, but we just simply can't say with 100% certainty. But from that flinch, it looks to be a 4-4-2 crouch cancel. So yeah, that's why I didn't give it a name. But for now, let's call it 4-4-2, and then she performs the 3 high heat engager. I don't believe this has any actual low crush on it, very similar to the churning kick we saw just previously. Although this clearly being a heat engager, homing high, plus frame option. I guess we can also do the math here. Let's take a look. So there you can see her head tilt, no surface move. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it looks to be plus 4. Because it looks like Lars is flinching now. Yeah. So plus 4 or plus 5. Counter hit throw here. Important to note that counter hit throws are not inescapable. Only throws that are used as a punish are inescapable, although that might change by retail. In this case, this is a generic throw, so if Lars just kept mashing the down forward 1, he probably would have broke the 1 throw, but evidently he only did hit a 1. And now we see the generic throw for Reina. Little flip over takedown into ground pound, you know, very karate-esque. Maybe even a little Aikido built into it. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. They kind of do a special camera angle. That's kind of cool. There are certain animations, like in T7 when the game ends, that it continues through. Like for instance, like Kunimitsu's kunai, it, you know, does the very slow motion if it's a kill. I doubt this will be the case, but it's nice that they kind of threw that in there. I did like that. Okay, so as talked about, or maybe you not talked about in this video, I talked about in the other video, which will be merged together. Shout out to my members. Yeah, very clearly we see Reina call Jin Senpai. I guess they went to the Mishima technical school together, although presumably she was younger when Jin was in there, hence the Senpai part. I don't know. It's strange, just very strange though. Okay, we see the very big overhead advancing kick, almost certainly a Mishima style 4-4-3. Although notice how the 4-4-3 itself is no longer a launcher, similar to Kazuya's 4-4-3, but instead is just a safe heat engager instead. So it probably will be plus frames, who knows. But it furthermore should also be noted, it has a lot of fucking range. So the fact that she performs it from neutral and it tracks down the CDS drop is impressive. Like that's really, really, really good range. So if Reina's 4-4-3 was that strong and long hitting, and a launcher probably would be overkill. Okay, so we see the big churning kick. Although this time it's performed out of standing, so it almost certainly is not actually a stance, although there is a weird little animation to it. And because it's a high homing heat engager, it can also be heat dash canceled. Although notice how Jin is stuck in a floating state into a ground state almost immediately. So very clearly this was not designed to be a launcher. Although in the Leo video, we did see up forward 2-4 be heat dash canceled for full launch. So it's a little bit strange how, I don't know, maybe the Leo video is technically older than the Reina build, or maybe this was a conscious decision by the Namco team. It's unfortunately too hard to say. Although I would imagine that this is slow enough. Let's do the frame count here out of curiosity. I mean, this looks slow, right? Okay, head tilt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. 24? I mean, it's 24 and it's not a launcher? That doesn't make too much sense to me. I don't know, the heat engager rules are really, really weird in Tekken 8. The heat engager heat dash rules are very strange. Actually, again, that's one of my main complaints about T8, top right corner, for problems with T8. I don't know, it's really weird. I don't think like anyone would complain about a 24 frame high like being a launcher, right? I mean, who cares? That's like almost backlash speed, right? Well, who cares? Okay, whatever. Although I guess technically backlash isn't a launcher anymore. So, to be fair. And of course, here we see heat dash cancel into the stomp. Reina then performs a blue spark extension. It's hard to say if this is a true just frame or if something else is going on here. But very clearly, something is going on. I don't believe it to be an install per se. We talked about that in the Leo video. It's possible maybe there's an install here post-rage or post-heat, but I don't believe it to be the case. I think maybe it almost certainly is just bonus damage, maybe the blue spark. I don't think the hand punch downward is the blue spark part of it. It probably is just maybe bonus damage on the end, or maybe the Oki's a little bit different. It's hard to say, of course, without us knowing more. Also, the fact that there is no true analog to a move like this in T7 means I can't give you a proper educated guess. But my only educated guess is you can probably still do the ground pound with the fist. It maybe just does less damage. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. We see a move that looks very similar to down back 3+4, but instead, Reina is starting the attack with what probably would be a down back 3. So we have a homing high, a high crush built into it, hence she's going under in standing 4. Also, it should be noted that there is no counter hit spark on here. We don't see the purple slash. So that means this down back 3 line, so a high, mid, or actually maybe that is a high. No, I think that's the mid extension, right? It's important to note that this is a natural hit option. So we evade and we get the natural hit option here. But if you notice the purple spark on this final hit, that means that this property of the attack is specific just to heat. Now, does that mean this string is not NC when it's outside of heat? Or what? Again, we simply don't have enough information. Although, again, just the fact that sparks means this is a heat-only attack. Although, if you look at the animation, this is like a crumple stun, and then she sparks. So the crumple stun isn't the spark. The final hit is the spark. Maybe the spark is the natural hit, mid safety or something like that. Maybe something similar to June up forward 2 and cancel structure, where she can cancel and take damage to make things safer. It's hard to say, and again, we simply don't have enough information. The only thing we properly do know is that, again, this is not a counter hit. So this whole string is NC, and is going to do 3 hits of unscaled damage into a wall break. And then the final hit sparks too. So yeah, that final kick, this whole series probably does, so that's non-sparking, so like 16, 21, into another 21. So this move is doing at least realistically 60 damage, which is insane. Of course, it starts with a high, so it's not perfect, but at the same time, who cares? It's going to do a grip. Okay, so I talked about how this looks to be almost certainly an up forward 1. Let's go ahead and count the frames. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. 1, 2. Okay, so 2. So just like Marduk, she can perform probably out of full crouch via diagonal cancel and up forward 1 on 12 frames. So now from up forward 1, she transitions into Heaven's Wrath. And again, I really feel like it should be noted that I do understand that Heaven's Wrath, the move, is Heihachi's back 1+4 or back 2+3, where he basically grabs the incoming attack and literally just kicks them away. So he does take damage, although he can reverse things, in case you don't know, he can reverse things that other characters can't reverse. Elbows, headbutts, advancing attacks. There are very few things that can actually get through Heaven's Wrath. So it's important to understand that, yeah, Heaven's Wrath is really good, and while it might be a move for Heihachi, it is not quite the same with Reina specifically. So, but yeah, this is Heaven's Wrath. So has the classical Heaven's Wrath property, we'll see later, but the stance itself is properly a stance. So just keep that in mind. So from here, Reina performs a 4-4, so kind of similar to like Heihachi back 4-4, 2-2, and then big boy 1+2. Yeah, the whole thing likely is to be NC, kind of similar to installed Leo back 3-1 series or something to that effect. And we see the big hit here. Oh, one kind of small note, because some people have asked that. It's like, okay, well, Reina is purple, and in case, once again, you don't know, Reina meaning queen, and purple is the royal colors. It's a very regal color because purple, for history buffs out there, was actually one of the hardest colors to actually make. It required a special pigment from a flower, and I can't remember the flower, my apologies. I'll put it on the screen here. It required a flower that was very rare and took a tremendous amount of those flowers to create the color purple. So the color purple is a royal color because it literally cost more than people would make in their lives as a peasant, essentially. So it was insanely expensive. Hence, purple is a royal color. But why the color yellow? So it's known as a complementary color. So a complementary color is a color that falls directly opposite on the color wheel. So if you look at purple, the complementary color of purple is yellow. So there realistically isn't anything special like the purple, while you might think, oh, it signifies Heihachi. No, not really. It just, again, signifies the fact that she's using electricity and she's regal. And then furthermore, the yellow doesn't represent anything. It's just a complementary color to purple. So we get, again, the duality of the character, right? She's all about balance, as we see in the Rage art. She's designed, the same thing here, with balance in structure. So, of course, if her color is purple, to balance out purple, we have a complementary yellow to go with it. Color theory for you. There you go. Okay, so CD1 with Jin is always -13, regardless if he has non-electric or not. Reina punishes with presumably a down forward 1+2 headbutt. I would presume that down forward 1+2, because it's a headbutt, can be ducked if it's non-jailing. It might be jailing, which would be a really bad decision from Namco, but who knows. And I mention that because if you look at Heihachi's Rage Drive, technically it's a mid-high, but it's jailing. And you might think to yourself, okay, well then you can backdash and then duck the, you evade the mid and then duck the high and launch them, which is true in theory, until you realize that Heihachi can also perform 1 back 2, 1+2, which has insane range. So his mid all of a sudden is hitting like half screen, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I just won't, I won't duck the high. But yeah, I would hopefully this is a high that can be ducked. Okay, taking the plus frames, we see a Hellsweep into 2, and from 2 transitions into Heaven's Wrath. And from Heaven's Wrath, we see that she has access to a low Heat Smash, which is kind of interesting because we also see something very similar with Leo's Heat Smash out of K&K. Also is a low. So maybe that's like the general design philosophy going forward into Tekken 8, right? Maybe it's just that, if you have a stance, you have a low option, which also at the same time is very similar to Lydia, who also could perform a low Rage Drive out of stance. I can't remember what stance it is. I'll just show here, video here. So it's very obvious that the design philosophy of Lydia did carry over into Tekken 8, which, as I've talked about before, Geese Back 2 was added to the game before it was given to any other character in Season 2. So it's very possible going forward, this will be the pattern with low heat smashes. Here we go. Everyone's favorite part of the trailer. This is definitely my favorite part of the trailer. Not so much the incoming electric, but the fact that they decided to show more like Mishima style gusto with the character. Because, like I had mentioned, prior to this, very much a lot of like Eddy feeling moves to her. We didn't see anything super special. We just saw a very brief glimpse of what Heaven's Wrath could mean and what it can do. But here is where we actually start to see the meat and potatoes of the character. Again, the duality of the character means that she can be played very many ways, both simultaneously, and that is what makes her very, very interesting to myself. The fact that, you know, because she has so many stances, so many options, and can be played so many ways, she's going to be dynamic in her use. So I talked about this in the video. If you look at it frame by frame, Reina does initiate her electric one frame quicker. So this is frame 1. And frame 2, we see Kazuya start moving. So 1, 2. And of course, I can't do a 1-to-1 on the electric slow motion here. But presumably, Namco wasn't cheating. And we see a 13 frame perfect electric. Does that mean Reina has a perfect electric launcher unscaled? It is yet to be seen, but it is interesting that she has something I-13 to really round her out. We've already seen an up forward 1 on 12. We've seen a down forward 1 on 13. She presumably has a flash punch combo, but who knows? But yeah, she's going to be pretty all over the place. Now, someone did mention this in my comments, and I'm very happy someone did mention it. But the fact here that after her electric, she transitions into stance. So she's not in her normal power stance. She presumably is in an Unsoku or something similar to Unsoku. So notice how she's not in her default power stance. She is in a half stance. So that means by definition, because she is transitioning into stance, that she presumably can't do electric into electric. So we aren't going to see like major electric combo lines unless as Reina you're allowed to choose what stance you enter into. I don't believe that'll be the case. I think it probably by default will transition into Unsoku, where we have seen that she can block. So yeah, you're going to see maybe counter hit, double overstun, perfect electric, and that'll be it. no more super scaling combos from there. But yeah, that is an interesting point, and I'm very glad someone mentioned that, because while in my head I'm like, oh yeah, it's a stance. It's like, oh wait, that does change things. So Unsoku, forward 4, 2, 3, I guess. So will be her tornado spin. I talked about how this looks very similar to Lydia's. As mentioned, there definitely is some Lydia influence in these characters. Reina especially, we see the carryover right there. So she then pops her heat burst. So it does like an overhead kick, which we haven't seen thus far. Or I guess maybe we did see it with the overhead after down back 1+2. Hard to say. And now, from her default stance, or her power stance, her LFF, she then performs her second heat burst, or heat smash, my apologies, which is like a massive KOF style carry over to the combo. I guess maybe like a Yamazaki kind of style, launching Kazuya into the air and then breaking the wall right behind them. Just a great touch. I mean, this looked sick. Like you have like the really crazy ground grab, carry, launch, and then palm like right through them. I mean, it's so great. This is so much better than the electric too. What a great addition. Okay, clearly causing wall break. And then from here, we see the very prototypical Heihachi 1+2. So it is kind of interesting how after the heat smash occurs, she kind of just like flexes, almost looking like she might be built like going back into Unsoku, but there's just not enough information. I think it's more likely that this move 1+2 is proper power stance LFF default 1+2 than it is anything else, but very clearly inspired by Heihachi's 1+2, and then furthermore is I-12. Okay, so I talked about how forward 4, she performs what appears to almost certainly be like a forward 3+4 right entrance, which has the parry. Although what I didn't mention, and I didn't really cheat during the trailer, but this move puts you into full crouch. So when she's performing this parry, it looks like she's quick standing or like, doing a very slight crouch cancel, but it's possible that, like Leroy, she's performing an up forward one of some sort to crouch cancel parry. So as Heihachi, if you were to try to do Rai, aka forward 3+4, to parry this incoming down forward 2, you would lose because you're in crouching and forward 3+4 gets interpreted incorrectly. So I don't know if it's like I said, a diagonal crouch cancel, or if this is just a perfectly timed parry. It's hard to say, although this very clearly is some sort of just frame sparks into Heaven's Wrath stance. And from Heaven's Wrath, just like Omen stance with Jin in Tekken 8, she performs a TGF into a 4-ender. I did talk about notice how it's very high in the air. So it very likely is possible that, if the Heaven's Wrath 1-4 occurs, you can just duck the second hit. I don't know if it would make it so you can't perform the second hit if you're on the defense, because by definition, Thunder Godfists are -15. Maybe there is a mix-up. It's like, oh, am I going to do just TGF or am I going to do TGF4? A sort of pseudo mix-up like Deviljin has with either a TGF mid or a TGF launching low. Maybe there is a little bit of inspiration there. I didn't mention that because, for time purposes. Okay, so notice how she is in heat mode. Let's back up. So again, notice furthermore, more than heat, she is in Unsoku, which gives credence to the electric into forward 4. So from Unsoku, forward 4, 2, and then instead of performing the final hit, she then transitions into Heaven's Wrath. So Kazuya does a down forward 1, and then Reina performs a chest bump, I don't want to call it, a chest parry into a stomp. So again, off of Heaven's Wrath, if you were to be in a similar situation, again, Heihachi would reverse any kind of incoming attack and then do the kick away. But, seeing as how we've only seen Heaven's Wrath off of punches thus far, or just manual stance and whatnot, it's very likely that maybe this Heaven's Wrath stance only beats punches. Now, if we were talking Heihachi, I would say, oh, Heihachi is going to reverse everything here. But I'm wondering if this, again, like I said, only beats punches, because we've only seen punches thus far. Of course, you can't make a complete determination. This is pure speculation. But I am inclined to believe that this is a punch parry more than an actual Heaven's Wrath, just like the normal Rai entrance only works on punches as well. So it is important to note that it's very possible this is only a punch parry. In this case, of course, it's a reversal. Although furthermore, notice how Reina does take damage from the hit. Although then she does the stomp. Then she does the follow-up hit, so on and so forth. So she does take damage like Heihachi's Heaven's Wrath as it is. Okay, and last but not least, and I did mention this, this is the only trailer we've seen thus far without a counter hit option that's performed. So it's really weird. I don't know if they don't want to tip their hand that she has maybe like a Kazuya down forward 2 or something like that. But it's strange that, like I said, this is literally the only trailer we've seen thus far without this. Also, she appears to be an Unsoku when she performs this rage art. So again, Reina being Miss Duality and, having the balance between her own Taido art form and Mishima style karate, it's possible maybe she also is the only character with 2 rage arts. With that being said, a little bit disingenuous because, technically Asuka does have 2 variations on her rage art, although they do the same animation, but it's possible that we do have another rage art that we just don't know about yet. To be honest, would be a kind of cool reveal. Now, granted, maybe someone at Namco would be more inclined to put the trailer out there and be like, oh, hey, check this out, 2 rage arts. But I don't know. I feel like she might actually have another one. I think there's no coincidence that we don't see a counter hit into the rage art. It's very specific. Oh, Unsoku rage art. I don't think this was an accident. I think there's, in this case, no such thing as a coincidence. That's why I'm not going to give it like a definite, but I want to say like 60% chance it's going to be the case. So, okay, we've got a double jumping stomp, and then we transition to like the Shadow Realm or whatever this might be. In the background, we have the moon, and we have a bunch of clusters of rocks, very similar to Devil Jin's Nightmare stage. And then ground, it looks like she almost like a chop, but like a finger chop right into him. Oh, even though she's not hitting him. In slow motion, you can see she's not even touching him. And then we get the moon split into two. And then, of course, at the bottom, we see Heihachi's spirit living on in Reina. Now, I'm not one to believe the theory that Reina is reincarnate. I think that's a ridiculous theory. Again, like, you don't need Heihachi to come back. Like, it's okay that he's dead. Like, come on, guys. But yeah, again, I think Reina, being the Reina queen kind of is more likely to be the case. I don't think there's any sort of Heihachi coming back or taking over her body or something preposterous like that. I think that's kind of silly, to be honest. But I'm still excited to play her, and we'll definitely get major storylines and story beats with her, clearly with maybe the Akuma influence of the early part of the stage and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot coming our way for sure. That will do it for me here. Comments, questions, concerns, hit me up, YouTube, Reddit, Twitch, Twitter. If you have anything else you want to see, please let me know. And I'll see you guys next time